Hello and welcome to this lesson. Today we're going to be talking about how to get an IFR clearance from a controlled field as an airliner. We're going to look at what the craft acronym means, who you should be calling, and of course all the types of information you may need to know in order to get your clearance for your IFR out of a controlled field. Let's jump into the cockpit, call up the controller, and get going. We're on the ground in Fort Lauderdale and we'll be flying to Atlanta, Jacksonville, Hartsville Airport today. We're flying in the Boeing 737-700. I've already created and filed my flight plan with VATSIM. And we'll be calling up our controller today to get our clearance. Before we do that, I want to go over the craft acronym.
Crew boarding starting.
Craft acronym is CRAFT. C is your clearance limit. R is your route, E is your altitude, F is the frequency, and T is transponder. Clearance limit is usually going to be your destination airport, but not always going to be the case. Your route, you're typically going to be reading back just your departure and your transition waypoint. This would be your SID and the transition off the SID to your route. Your altitude may vary. There may be different types of instructions like climb and maintain 10,000. Expect your flight level 5 minutes after or 10 minutes after. Or climb and maintain 3,000. Expect flight level 380 5 minutes after. There's different ways that this may be read out. Frequency is going to be your departure frequency. Depending on who's online, it may be different. For example, if you have approach online or departure online, that would be the frequency you could expect. However, if you're flying on a field that just has ground control online or just a tower controller online, that frequency would be Unicom 122.8. If you have center online, then typically you'd also have that as an option if you didn't have a approach controller online. Transponder is going to be the code that the controller gives you for you to squawk in your aircraft. Now today we'll be demonstrating in the 737-700 how to get your clearance, but it ultimately doesn't matter what aircraft you use. Whether it's a 737 or an Airbus or a 747 or an A380 or a CRJ or a McDonnell Douglas, whatever aircraft you use, you need to know your aircraft before you fly it. In fact, VATSIM requires you, per their regulations, to know your aircraft before you fly on the network. Let's go ahead and tune at Miami Center. They're going to be the controlling authority over Fort Lauderdale, as there's no other air traffic control here at the airport. They're going to be on 135.175. Now, as we tune up this ATC, note that we can go ahead and fill out this craft acronym to a particular point, but not always. For example, our clearance limit today, we know is going to be Atlanta. So we'll go ahead and put an ATL under the clearance limit. Our route today, our departure, our SID that we have filed is the Frisbee 2 with the stymie transition. Our altitude, we know we're going to end up being at flight level 380. Now this is unless they amend it, which they could do. Our frequency, our departure frequency, is going to be with Miami Center on 135.175. We don't know our transponder code. We'll leave that blank. Now before we tune up Miami Center, I do want to grab the ATIS because we want to be able to call up Miami Center and let them know we have the ATIS on board.
2.18. Altimeter 3006. Arrivals expect ILS approach runway 10 left or 10. Departing runways runway 10 left and 10. Simultaneous operations are being conducted on parallel runways. Notices to air missions. Attention all aircraft. Hazardous weather information available from ATC. CPDLC service available. Aircraft taxi with transponders on. Shoreline traffic. Numerous birds in the vicinity of the airport. Read back all runways hold short instructions. Command error in phoneme. Advise on initial contact. You have information Alpha. Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport ATIS information Alpha 2253 Zulu. Web 060 at 14 gust 22. Visibility 10. Few clouds at 2,700. Ceiling 3,100 broken. 7,000 broken. Temperature 26. 2.18. Altimeter 3006. Arrivals expected.
All right, we got ATIS Alpha on board, and now what we're going to do is we're going to call up Miami Center and get our clearance. The important thing here, as I've always stated, is you need to make sure you do a cold call to begin the conversation. Let's do that, and let's call Miami Center. Miami Center, Delta 718.
Delta 718, Miami Center, go ahead.
Miami Center, Delta 718 on the ground at Fort Lauderdale with information Alpha, looking for IFR clearance to Atlanta.
Delta 718, you are cleared to Atlanta via the Frisbee 2 departure, stymie transition that is filed. Climb maintain 4,000, flight level 38010 minutes after departure. Departure frequency is with me, squawk 3360.
Delta 718 cleared to Atlanta via the Frisbee 2 departure, stymie transition then is filed. Maintain 4,000, expect flight level 38010 minutes after departure. Departure with you on 135.175 and squawk 3360 for Delta 718.
Delta 718, readback is correct. Expect runway 10 right for departure, call ready for taxi.
We'll expect runway 10 right for departure. We'll call for taxi, Delta 718. Okay. Let's talk about what we just went through here. So we got our Atlanta clearance. They gave us the Frisbee 2 departure and then the stymie transition as we discussed and believed we would get. And then we also got the altitude of 4,000 feet. This is our initial altitude we'll use when we depart the airport. Then we'll climb to our flight level, our cruising altitude of 38010 minutes after. So this is letting us know that we can anticipate we're going to climb up to our cruise, or given clearance to climb up to our cruise altitude 10 minutes after our departure, sometime between 0 and 10. The frequency for our departure is going to be with center on 135.175, and then it gave us our squawk code of 3360. If at any point in time during the readback something is unclear or you need something to be repeated for you to write it down, don't be afraid to call back. Instead of giving them the full clearance, ask Miami Center, Delta 718, could you clarify the altitude, or could you clarify our departure? Could you clarify what frequency we need to be on? Can you clarify our transponder code, or can you say transponder code again? If at all possible, you don't understand anything that they said, you can ask them to repeat the clearance. And if you don't understand it the second time, ask for a PDC. PDC is simply a pre-departure clearance, and oftentimes in busy airports or busy centers, you'll get one before you even call up. All it is a text clearance you'll get in your client, whether it's vPilot or xPilot, that'll give you your full clearance. If you get a PDC, you don't have to call up and get your clearance. That serves as your IFR clearance. The only thing you'll need to do is call it for your taxi, just like you would after you received a verbal IFR clearance. This sums up their lessons on IFR clearance from a controlled field. Now, you also might be flying from an uncontrolled field in some circumstances. In the next lesson, we'll cover exactly what that looks like, flying from an uncontrolled field and getting an IFR clearance.